Mr. Basic here. Welcome to my very first Patches from Scratches, featuring this time the System 1M and no patch cables going on here except for the gate and CV coming from my mini brute, which I am just using for the arpeggiator and keyboard. Now what we're going to do today is take a simple square wave and do something great with it. Turn it into a nice square lead with pulse width modulation all over it. That makes it sound really nice. And onboard effects. And why I would include onboard effects in patching or in how to make a patch is because I do include effects as yet another type of modulation in the synthesis process. It might often go on, the end of a patch and is always tending to be additive as opposed to filtering like subtractive parts of the synthesis are. But I do always consider it a part, and I recommend that anyone find any way they can to include in their system, whatever it may be, or include with their synthesizer a way to either onboard or as a pedal get their reverb and delay in some way or another, because it adds a lot to all of your sounds. And if you're going to use it in the end, which I plan on doing all the time, I think it should be part of a patch when doing a video like this. Okay, now bear with me, I'm going to be just totally off the cuff on this, but I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. I'm going to first show you what the patch sounds like, and then I'm going to just quickly initialize everything and then get back to it. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and just bring all the envelopes down. We're going to bring everything down, bring the cutoff all the way up, resonance all the way down, everything at its 0 point, reverb all the way down, delay, and its time. And we want to have our tone on our amp at a regular amount. Okay, now that's not going to be a feature on very many of your synthesizers unless you have the System 1. So we'll bring our rate of our LFO down. We don't have it going to anything here, but we're going to take this destinations knob for this amount back to manual, just so I can show you what we're going to be doing with it. And so pretty much, sub oscillator all the way down. So we've got everything in such a way where we can show you exactly how it works. All right, now this is going to be pretty quick because I wanted to start out with a really basic patch of like, how do you take a square wave? And actually, with the whole envelope down, this is what it sounds like. Just clicks. But you bring the decay up to about 40. Bring it all the way up. So what I had it doing was at about 50 or 60. And then we'll take the attack and just just bring it up a little bit so it takes that bite off of it, but not so that it takes the attack away entirely. Up here, that's too much. Is that too much roll off? I think it's still too much roll off because we want to keep that sound of a square in the end, so that we still know that we're listening to a synthesizer, because it's still reminiscent of a square wave in our end patch. So now we bring up the sustain a little bit. That's not going to sound like much now, but along with giving it some release. A little bit of a tail. If you give it too much, it's going to ring out. And what we want to do to make it ring out is use more onboard effects for that, because it'll be a little bit more gradual than this envelope. So we want to keep with an actual square wave. And so now, what we want to do with the filter, we take it down at 3/4. This is it down at half. We've taken out most of the sound there. So basically, we want to keep with a square wave. There's so much buzz. But what we want to do is first emulate what the amp envelope is doing. And let's start out with that. That already sounds a lot better, right? Okay, so, but what I also want to do is bring the filter attack up just a little bit further than the amp attack, so that the filter gets opened up a little bit after you start the note. And on top of that, what I like to do is use a lot more filter envelope than just a plain cutoff, because a cutoff is a cutoff. Using an envelope makes it more gradual. So using the envelope, I bring it in, but it's going to open up the filter too much from where I had it, which is here. But if I now bring the cutoff down to where I like it, you still hear a square wave, even though the cutoff is down at 50 for that low pass filter at a 24 dB. And I bring the high pass cutoff up a little bit to 25%. And that helps. Okay, so then I want to give it a little bit of portamento. That's too much. Too much bend. I want a little bit of character, but not so much that you can really notice it. It's still a square, right? Okay, and what we've got on our oscillators is we've got them both at 16 feet, which is dead center. Well, and here it's gonna actually be there, but for some reason it just doesn't sound like it to me. All right, now I've got my LFO on a sine wave, and so what I want to do with my LFO is actually bring the rate up just a tiny bit, and you'll be able to hear the speed of it when I use it. And I want to modulate each one of these square waves pulse width with this color knob. And having a square wave on each oscillator, I can modulate each of their pulse widths. And I can do that with the LFO by not having to patch in a cable because of this multi-mode knob. It's a multi-mode destinations knob. Or it's actually no, I'm sorry, it's a multi-mode sources knob, and it chooses the source, in this case being our LFO here, our sine wave LFO. So a sine wave is going to modulate both this and this at the amount of our knob, right? And so we're gonna keep one at just below, or at 1/3, and then we're gonna bring the other to 2/3. The other oscillator to 2/3. And with that going, you can kind of hear that. We'll bring up the release just so you can see. And I'm going to bring up the speed of that LFO a little bit, of the sine wave. And that'll be better for a sequence, right? For a faster sequence, if you want to do that. All right, and so it still doesn't sound that great. One thing we're going to do to soften it up a little bit is to fine-tune one oscillator off of the other, detune a little bit, a tiny bit. Got some ripping action there. We're going to open the envelope up a little bit more and close the filter a little bit more, and that'll soften it up a bit, and we'll see if we can still end up with our square. That still sounds very square. It's too opened though. Too closed. Tiny movements. Sounding good. Now we'll take this tone knob and we'll just give it a lot of warmth. It's a little bit of a kind of like a low pass filter, but not really. It's a low pass gate with a high pass gate, which we don't want to use, and I'm sorry about that. And we can offset that a little bit by bringing up our cutoff again. Now that we're pretty satisfied with that, we'll bring up our reverb a little bit more than 30%. Now it's sounding pretty good, right? Bring up our rate of our LFO. Bring it back down. Okay, now another thing I like to do is take the time dial and bring it up a little bit. This is a digital delay. And just bring up the delay amount just a tiny bit. You get a little chorusing. You bring it up more, just 1/3. It acts as its own reverb. See, I bring the reverb all the way down, you see what I mean? It's as if it's reverb. So I'll bring the reverb that much further up to cut through that. And the delay a little bit further down. Back down to where it should be. Because like I said, I wanted to do it with reverb, not so much with the envelope. So I think we got it. I think that's about it. And a little softer. Thanks, everybody, and subscribe if you'd like to be notified of all my further patches from scratches that I'll be doing, for years now. Very first one. I love my System 1. It was my very first synthesizer, and I really have gotten a lot out of it, and I'm going to be really excited about showing you more and more as time goes by. Have a good day, and I'll see you soon.